Wrestling.com/WrestlingObserver.com, and Dave is rushing over to do something. I don't know what, but you know, we're live, pal. But I think we're going to start over. So stand by, and we'll be right back. How's it going, everybody? Brandon Elvis and Dave Meltzer.
I'm not going to trust my memory for all these different things.
All right, let's just get going. What's going on with Janelle Grant and Vince McMahon?
I mean, nothing really, but they had the Judge Russell made two rulings on that case, one favorable and one unfavorable, I guess, as far as like one for each side. But the key one is that the McMahon side, or the WWE side, was trying to get the second lawsuit, all the things that were added in the second lawsuit, thrown out. Just the new stuff, basically saying it should have been in the first lawsuit. There's no reason to add it in the second one. They knew everything. They knew all the stuff before. Why didn't they put it in first? And the judge ruled that they didn't really have a great reason as far as adding it, but just felt that there's no reason to keep it out either. So that's in. The Janelle Grant side was looking to get the depositions going, and the WWE side has been trying to delay it, basically saying that until the judge rules whether this thing is going to be sent to arbitration or opened up for trial, or the case will go forward as a civil case, that there's no need for depositions because it's a waste of time if things going to go to arbitration. So the judge's ruling there was pretty much in favor of the WWE side, but they did that they basically opening up all depositions would not happen, but that they could depose people as far as facts that would implicate or whatever that would have to do with the arbitration thing itself, so they can do questioning, but it only has to do with whether or not subjects related to whether it should be sent to arbitration or go to trial. So all the other topics at this point are not allowed to be discussed. However, at the same time, in the lawsuit with the stockholders lawsuit against Vince McMahon and TKO, which has to do with the merger with UFC and going with forming TKO, going with Endeavor, as opposed to selling. They believe that they're suing over the idea that when Vince McMahon decided that he was going to sell the company, that he did not go with the highest cash bidder. He went to Endeavor because Endeavor was going to guarantee him that he would remain in charge. And so they're suing over that, which is going to be a tough suit to win because of damages. Because the reality is that if you're suing over that, you're suing on behalf of the stockholders. The idea is that the stockholders are getting a bad deal in something that would happen. They made a choice that would impact the stock price negatively. In fact, the stock price went way up. If the stock price had gone down, the whole act, which started with Vince forcing himself on back to the company, the deal there was that that would have opened them up to a lawsuit. However, Vince realized that, and immediately, when forcing himself back into the company, said they were going to sell. As soon as he said they're going to sell, the stock price went up, not down. Because it wasn't, oh my God, Vince is back, and we've got all this bad PR and all that. It was, oh, let's get excited. They're going to go for sale, and the stock's going to be worth more. So stock price went up. So I don't know exactly, because again, the lawsuit there would be over monetary damage. Now, how it relates to the Grant lawsuit is that they are trying to push discovery in their own case. And in their case, what's happened is that the Vince side has been basically saying that they don't want to discuss anything having to do with sexual infidelity suits, the NDAs and things like that. And the lawyers for the stockholders case say that we have to discuss that because that's the whole reason you got into this mess in the first place, and you had to, you got in trouble, and there'd be no sale if this thing didn't happen, which is pretty much true. So even though the Grant side at this point may not be able to depose Vince and WWE regarding many things, this other lawsuit, they are looking right now at deposing him over that. And if that suit isn't thrown out, and I don't think it will be, that I don't see how you can rule against the stockholder suit against discovery having to do with the NDAs, because the NDAs are a huge part of why Vince got in trouble and why this whole thing went, the history of everything went the way it was, including the merger with TKO. So that's kind of the situation. It's, a lot of big things going on there. There's no date for the judge ruling, but the next steps in the Grant case are basically the Grant side would have to argue against the arbitration, and then so that would be basically the next thing, and then there'd have to be rulings on that too. So that's what's going on. There's those two suits. There's a Ring Boy suit. Now there's the Coker suit against Ann Callis. So they're all going on at the same time, and there may be others popping up as well. I mean, there may be others. I know there's one that's maybe in the works, which would be, but we'll see. It's one that I've talked about for years, though. Which would have to do with the mirror suit of the Kung Lee suit, and there nothing may happen on that one. But that one is obviously because of the success of the Kung Lee suit. We said that the next thing that would happen is that somebody might get because everything in the Kung Lee suit regarding UFC goes for the same for WWE, if not more. So that, and it would be suing TKO and all that. Now the difference is, of course, they would have to get plaintiffs from the WWE, and the lawyers that are working on that suit still working on the Cage and Johnson suit. So I don't expect that to be anytime soon. Although other lawyers may jump in and look at that, and it's an obvious one. I just just question you to get some plaintiffs, and a lot of people are afraid to go for their careers to go against WWE. So it may be harder, but you just don't know how that's all going to go down. But the precedent is there already.
And concussion research.
Yeah, the Trump administration is trying to cut back on, as a budget cutting thing. They're the budget that they're submitting for next year includes basically, getting rid of a lot of money that was in previous budgets that had been earmarked for brain injury research, having to do with sports and having to do with brain injuries, in combat as well. So the Center for the Prevention of Disease Control and Prevention basically placed, all 5 employees devoted to administering that process, unpaid administrative leave, according to ESPN. So anyway, that's a story there. It was up to go through Congress and everything to get it changed, but that would impact on hospitals and universities that are studying TBA research, concussion research, long-term research into that. So it could be very unfortunate as far as that goes.
We got a resurgence coming up on Friday for New Japan, and also the Best of the Super Juniors about to kick off.
Yep.
Resurgence Friday's got the Goto Zack Sabre Jr. match for the IWGP Heavyweight title. Takeshita and ELP for the Never Openweight title. Ishii, Drilla Maloney for the Strong Openweight title. Mercedes against Azumi and Mina Shirakawa in a three-way for the Strong Women's title. World Class Wrecking Crew against Templario.
West Coast Wrecking Crew.
There's world class here. They're pretty world class.
The West Coast Wrecking Crew, Jarrell Nelson and Royce Isaacs.
Against Templario and TJP, Strong Openweight tag titles. Gabe Kidd, David Finlay, Clark Connors, and Ghetto versus the Young Bucks, and it was announced, the Good Brothers.
Yeah.
And Fred Rosser versus Matt Vandegrift, and Alan Breeze versus CJ Tino is the lineup for Friday's Resurgence show.
Yeah. And Best of Super Junior starts roughly an hour after that show ends, even though it's separate days because of the time slot. They basically are pushing the idea of you can watch one show, take an hour break, and then the other show starts, which is the May 10th show, which is the first night of the Best of the Super Juniors. It actually starts at it's like 1 a.m. Eastern, so I don't know if it's going to be 1 hour. But anyway, what do we got here? The first night is it starts at midnight Pacific. So if the other show starts at 7, it could go to 11. They should do 4-hour shows. So yeah, it would be about 1 hour difference. 3 a.m. Eastern. So it'd be the first night we'll have Kushida against Hiromu Takahashi, which is they had that big feud years ago, mini classic matches. Dragon Dia, and I'm not sure about Dragon Dia because he suffered an elbow injury a couple days ago at the Dead or Alive show in the cage match, as a matter of fact. Landed very bad on his elbow, looked dislocated. So based on that, I think he's probably not going to be in the tournament. I don't know if there's going to be a replacement or they're going to do forfeits because it's such a late injury. Kosei Fujita against Akira, which will be excellent. El Desperado against Titan, which will be excellent. Nick Wayne against Sho, and then the Sunday show, which is the other weekend show, would be Ninja Mac against Robbie X, Master Wato against Clark Connors, Kevin Knight, who was basically massacred tonight against Mao, which would be that's a unique match. Yo against Robbie Eagles, which would be great, and Ryusuke Taguchi against Taichi Ishimori, which will no doubt be good as well. So also for Dominion, they have announced Yosuchi against Gabe Kidd for the global title, and whoever wins between Zack and Hiroki Goto will defend against Shingo Takagi in the main event, which is in a way that's okay. So in a way it's like it feels like a weak main event for Dominion, but at the same time it's like Shingo Takagi does pretty much guarantee an awesome match against either of those two, and Goto Goto's been a hell of a champion, I have to say, on this run. He's very, very, very Bret Hartish in the sense that it reminds me when WWE lost Hogan and all the steroid guys left over suspensions or not wanting to stop taking steroids and quit. And then, they lost so many guys, and Vince went to Bret, and Bret was kind of like the guy to, get them through a bad time in New Japan. Guys didn't leave for that reason; they left for money reasons. But they lost so many stars, so many big drawing cards. And Goto's been put, on top. He was kind of given a reign with the idea. The original thing obviously was there was just this groundswell of support for him after he won the Rambo, and people were like, "Hey, he's going to get his first title shot in like 10 years. He's never held the title." Just kind of worked. It was the right thing to do on that night. But he's really turned himself into a hell of a champion. Every title match has been great against worked with some of the old guys in kind of cool nostalgia matches. Nagata and Tanahashi. Had a hell of a match with Colin Newman. Obviously him and Zack will probably have a great match on this weekend, and then over there as well. And then it's going to be a tag title. I believe it's
Callum Newman and Great Khan versus Ishii and Taichi.
Yeah, which would be probably a hell of a match. Any match with Ishii is. And, Ishii and Taichi, they had that win over Naito and, what was it, I think, Hiromu Takahashi on, in the match last week in, I think it was Hiroshima. And, man, that was a freaking awesome match. So, yeah, that'd probably be a great match.
And also Finlay and Evil in a dog collar match.
Well, that'd be a bloodbath.
We've also got this coming Saturday, obviously, the WWE Backlash pay-per-view with John Cena and Randy Orton for the title, Gunther and Pat McAfee, Lyra versus Becky for the Women's Intercontinental title, Dominic and Penta for the Men's Intercontinental title, and Jacob Fatu versus Drew, LA Knight, and Damian Priest in a 4-way for the U.S. title. And a UFC as well.
Yeah.
Lord.
Jack Della Maddalena will be challenging Bilal Muhammad. This is a Montreal show, and there are a decent amount of tickets left for this one. They've been in Montreal years and years, but Montreal is one of those cities. I mean, it drew great for George St. Pierre, but I think that they probably needed a better card, and it's very high ticket price. And also Valentina Shevchenko against Manon Fiorot for the flyweight title. So it's not really what I would call a strong marquee show, but it is 2 championship matches on the show.
Arena Mexico.
Man, there's a lot going on there. I guess the first thing is they announced today. Let me get the matches. So when they were waiting for the MLW thing to end, and now they're starting to promote the AEW stuff. So on the Tuesday, Arena Mexico, this is the night before the TV taping. So it's going to be Arena Mexico's going to run Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday that week. So on the Tuesday show, they announced Angel De Oro and Diego Roja defending female tag team titles against Leo Rush and Action Andretti, and quite the main event. Kind of a very unique match. I think it's the first time ever. Bandito against Mascara Dorada, and for whatever reason, it reminds me of I saw Bandito in Dragon Lee at PWG at the Globe Theater, which was an incredible match, like an awesome match. And Dragon Lee and Mascara Dorada are not the same, but there's some similarities there in the sense that Mascara Dorada is a great flyer. And then for Fantastica Mania, they announced Thunder Rosa against Yaro Cheetah. The main event on that show will be Titan, Shingo Takagi, and Hiromu Takahashi against Templario, TJP, and Francisco Akira, which will be a great match. And then Wednesday, I think that it's the expectation is there's going to be a big match involving Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega against each other, but on that show, because that's those are the 2 guys I think that the fans at Arena Mexico are looking forward to seeing the most. So I watched some of the MLW show that they did, at Arena Mexico against CMLL on Friday night. They had a hell of a crowd. I mean, it was as big a crowd as the week before. Of course, it was also Mystico returning Friday night, and I mean, it was interesting because when you watch it, it was like it wasn't like the wrestling was not the traditional lucha libre stuff, because that group, that went there, they're not luchadors. So they had that mixed style. So it was not the style that you usually see on a Friday. But it was a very, very loud crowd. They didn't react to the matches in the same way, and it didn't really react in a lot of ways to the the MLW talent, but they were very into the title matches. They had Satoshi Kojima and Okamura losing the MLW tag team titles to Magnus and Rito. And when they won, when Magnus was double pin, I think Rito did a German on Kojima, and Magnus pinned Okamura at the same time. And the crowd just went crazy. Like, they just won world championships. Like, our guys, even though Magnus and Rito are Rudos, whenever the Rudos wrestle the foreigners, it's always like the people get way behind the Rudos. That's just been something that's happened in Mexico going back 50 years or more. And my eyes are messed up right now, but I'll try to get through this. So anyway, they went crazy for that finish. And then the same thing happened when Ultimo Guerrero wrestled Matthew Justice for the national openweight title. And that crowd, it's very easy for that crowd to get behind Ultimo Guerrero against a foreigner because they love Ultimo Guerrero, even though he's a Rudo. And like Matthew, it was funny because the match when Ultimo Guerrero was beating on Matthew Justice, the crowd was way behind him. And then when Matthew Justice would get the advantage, they were going quiet, and Matthew Justice trying to work the crowd, trying to be a heel, and he got some reaction. But it was like he would get a near fall, and the crowd didn't really pop that big. Even though Guerrero would kick out, but when Guerrero was on top, they were going crazy when he won. And then when he won, they had like this big celebration. And then it was Mystico and Kushida in singles matches, the main event. And it was very much not a lucha match. I mean, it was Kushida working the arm. It's very clear that Mystico did several dives, but he's, you could see the injury had taken its toll. He didn't even win with La Mystica. He used a different submission, but it was mostly Kushida just working the arm, very much like like an old American style match. And it did get, the crowd reaction was good, but it was not great. But of course, when Mystico won, big reaction, of course, there as well. So overall, like, I'd have to call it a success because the crowd was really big and they were really loud. The other thing is CML came out with some stats, and basically, and these may be exaggerated. It was actually something having to do with tourism and everything. But they claimed 1.5 million fans watched CMLL per year this year. We'll watch this year or last year because business is way up. This would be a combination of Monday in Puebla, Tuesday in Mexico, Tuesday in Guadalajara, Friday in Mexico, Sunday in Mexico, and Saturday in Coloseo. So, which is probably a similar number, to the number that watches WWE all over the world. Maybe a little less. I'd have to add up those figures because WWE is drawing very, very well right now. But they also run less shows than they used to run. And other years it was 1.5 to 2 million. So there's that. But 30% of those fans, according to this, were from outside of Mexico. They were tourists from outside of Mexico. And if you look at the Tuesdays and Friday crowds are the big tourist crowds that are in Mexico. You really don't get the tourists on the Saturday shows or at Coloseo or the Guadalajara or Puebla. But the thing that's actually kind of amazing is that most of the tourists are from the United States. So there are actually more Americans that pay to see wrestling at Arena Mexico than any arena in the world, which is actually not a surprise. But the one that really hit me is that it is probable that more Americans will pay to see CMLL live attending shows than any promotion other than WWE, and a promotion that runs no shows actually in America, which is an amazing statistic. I mean, the amount of Americans that go to these shows in Mexico City now, it's really comparable to, in the regional days of like what, Dallas would do during the Von Erichs Freebirds, or what JYD would draw in New Orleans when he was on top, or probably less than Lawler in his best years, but equivalent to Lawler in most of those years in Memphis. And quite frankly, because they're running more shows, the numbers probably similar to, probably similar to what Bruno drew, if not more. And Bruno or Morales were headlining in Madison Square Garden. So it's really an amazing statistic. I never thought of it that way. It says a lot about a lot of different things. Especially like when you talk about the style that appeals to the casuals, because it's not American style that they're going to see.
All right, we got Billy Jack's Dark Side of the Ring, also Smashing Machine.
Okay, I'll go Smashing Machine first. The interesting thing is I saw an article in one of the leading experts on the Oscars, who polls voters and all that, predicted that Smashing Machine will get 3 Oscar nominations, that Dwayne will get a nomination for Best Actor, that it will get a nomination for Best Picture, and that Emily Blunt, who plays Mark Kerr's girlfriend, will get a nomination for Best Supporting Actress. So, there's been a lot of...
Didn't you get a report like a month ago where you said that people had seen parts of it, didn't think it was very good?
I did hear that, yeah, but the Oscar people are really high on this movie.
Wow.
So yeah, there's been a lot of talk of Dwayne getting his first nomination, but apparently there's the ones that could take odds and everything. There's some books that take odds on it, and they're putting odds up on it. But right now, the people who polled the voters are listing Dwayne as a favorite to get a nomination. They're not favorite to win any of those 3 categories, but just to get a nomination would be obviously giant step in his cap. I think he'd be the first wrestler to ever get a nomination for an Oscar. I'm sure he would be. His first full-time wrestler. I can't come up with a wrestler who's ever gotten a nomination. There might be someone back then, but not in our era, certainly. Dave Bautista never did. Cena never did. So Terry Funk never did. Piper never did. Never was even considered. So anyway, I saw the trailer.
I did see the trailer.
Yeah.
I didn't really gain much from it, but
I mean,
it's funny because I will say this: when I first heard that he was going to play Mark Kerr, I was like, The Rock, what? And then they had a still frame that came out months ago of him sitting in the corner. It was just like one shot. And I was like, God damn, it kind of looks like Mark Kerr.
Yeah, they made him look like Mark Kerr.
And then, but I will say, like when I watched the trailer, it was very hard to not see The Rock as I was watching it. So yeah, I guess we'll see.
Well, I mean, it's similar physiques, I mean, the Kerr story, it is an interesting story. I will say that. Story of redemption and everything, drug addiction, highs of highs, lows of lows, lots of